are you that guy who was into computers like since
11?
Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrei.
How are you doing, my man?
Not bad. Quite good today.
That's very optimistic. First of all, should I call you Alex or do you prefer Alexei?
You can call me both, whatever you like.
Okay. So the funny thing is that you're not the first person who has reached out to me to come to the podcast. So thank you very much for making my life easier. And I'm very happy that you reached out to me because I don't think when was the last time that I had a really, let's say, technical discussion here on the podcast. So I think it will be something good for the audience to maybe show them something different, something more technical. And maybe we can start with saying where exactly you work and who do you work for?
I'm from Moscow, which is in Russia, and I've been working for Badoo and Bumble. Bumble operates both Badoo and Bumble. And it's a great technical brand here in Moscow. Everyone knows Badoo, for example, and Bumble. Everyone knows tools which were created by our engineers. So it's great to work in this company.
How did you first find out about this company? Because you mentioned that the people in Russia know about Badoo and Bumble as like this tech, I don't know, I don't want to say giant, but like someone who's in front of the tech leadership. But what makes them so great? Like how do they tell everyone, like the students, that we are so great, or do they make their tech available to other people? Like, is it like open source thing or?
We attend a lot of activities. Every conference, for example, we prepare several speeches and reports and present them. We write a lot of technical articles. So almost every engineer knows about our company. That's how we achieve it.
Right. So this is part of the activity.
Yes.
Go on podcasts.
Yes.
Maybe for some people, I think maybe it would be good to just briefly tell them what is Bumble, because I'm not sure that everybody actually knows what it is.
Bumble is an application where people meet each other, where women make the first move.
Yes. I think that's the distinction from Tinder, because this one is where the ladies have the first go, I would say. I think the way it works, because I'm not going to lie, I tried it before here in Vancouver. I think the way it works is that you still do the normal swiping, swipe left, swipe right. But once you have a match, it's the lady that needs to first initiate the contact, right? Within a certain time, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So when we were discussing the topic for this podcast, for this episode with you, I think the idea was you would walk us through a process of, let's say we have a new feature for Bumble and how it would make its way to users internationally.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, maybe before we start, just my usual question that I normally ask people: how did you get into localization? Did you end up in localization because of Bumble, or did you have any tinkering with localization before?
I knew nothing about localization before Bumble.
Uh-huh.
But when I was offered to work in localization, I just decided to do it because it was very interesting how everything works, how just a regular text becomes an international text and is displayed in different locations in the application.
Did you join the company straight as a developer for localization tools, or did you first work somewhere else and then you moved into localization?
First, I worked on access control system and photo moderation system, but later I moved into the localization department.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working in this department for almost six years.
Right. Okay. Maybe one thing before we get into the whole process is, from what I understand, you guys, and you even mentioned it in the beginning, you guys sort of have your own tools. Did somebody in the beginning make a research, like market research, of what the other tools are available in the market, and then you decided to actually develop everything on your own? Like, what would be the reason why you decided to do your own tools instead of using something that's already available?
No, that's a great question. And that's all about process speed, flexibility, quality, security, and saving costs. So before you start the development of internal tools, you should consider different opportunities which are available on the market. And for now, internal tools work best, especially in terms of localization.
Are there actually any tools that you use that are commercial, or is everything like 100% developed internally?
Localization tools are 100% developed internally. We tried and examined some commercial tools, but we decided to stick with our own. And if your app can be translated and checked, for example, by 2 employees, you definitely don't need a sophisticated localization system. But in our case, we have so many custom solutions. For example, screenshot generation out of design files, then hot update functionality for mobile devices, and live shots. This tool allows us to check screenshots of every application scenario in every language. Some of them are available in third-party solutions, but some of them are not. That's why we develop internal tools.
Right.
It's developed. The active development is finished. Now we just support it, maintain.
Okay. Good. So I think that as we walk through the process, I think it would be a good idea where maybe you can share how some of your tools like help the process. So I guess we can just get started because I think it's going to take us a little while. I was actually thinking about it, like what kind of feature we're going to, let's say, imagine that we're developing. And since we said the specific thing for Bumble is that the ladies have their first go, what if I suggested that I'm pretty sure there's like an international Men's Day. What if there was a feature where on this specific day, it would reverse the functionality? So on this day, the guys would have the first go.
Okay. First, we have to start with the requirements. And at this stage, we prepare product requirements document where we describe every idea and how it should work. After that, we add everything is needed for development into this PRD. For example, texts. We add texts. We approve them, which means that we check that the texts are correct and they will be okay in that particular market.
Right.
For example, before you release any text, you have to be sure that this text is not a violation of rules. This is just a good text, which will reflect the same idea as you wanted to say.
We're still talking about the source language, right? Only.
Yes. The PRD, and this is about source language. Yes.
Right.
Before you start translating, you have to choose your source language. If most of your team understand English, it should be English. If it's Russian, it definitely should be Russian.
So what is it in your case? Is it English?
In our case, it's English, and it's international English because we have an office in Great Britain, in London, and there is British English, and we have other office in America. So there's American English, so it's international English.
Yeah. Are you thinking at this stage about internationalization? Like you mentioned, like if the text doesn't violate any rules, but before that we were talking about the features. Let's say, do you have any specific person who looks like, okay, like what Andre suggested and what we're going to implement right now actually wouldn't work, I don't know, in some feminist country or something like that? Or does it, like when it comes to the features, like what it should do, can it be affected by certain countries, or is it only once we get to the, let's say, the text level where it can have implications of, yes, this could work in those countries and no, it wouldn't work in some other countries?
Every idea comes from product managers, and they investigate the markets, and they know if it works or not. So they have initial idea if it works. After that, we have to analyze texts and approaches. Some of our localization managers investigate different languages. For example, Mexican Spanish, how is it different from Spain Spanish? And what if we show a Mexican Spanish person Spanish translation? Will they understand it? So we have to consider all of these things.
And so for the text, you mentioned that you check like if it's going to be appropriate. Are we still just only checking if the source text is going to be okay in certain countries?
Yes, we prepare English texts. We approve them. We say that they are appropriate. And after that, we are ready to send them for translation. In the PRD, we have a lexem table. This is a table which consists of all the texts which should be used in the final application when we implement this functionality. And as soon as all texts are approved, we send this PRD with the lexem table to our localization managers. And very quick, one of them adds all the text into the system. It takes just minutes. And after that, we can start development.
Okay, I'm pressing pause. I have a question about this. I think when we talk about the PRD document, from when I was checking your article, is it really just a Word document, or do you have like a specific system where you describe these new features and the lexeme table?
It can be a Word document, a Google document, or just a wiki page. But this document should have all the required parts. So description, explanation, and the lexem table.
Mm-hmm. That's a little bit interesting to me, because I was the impression that you were like this, this tech company and you have pretty much a tool for everything. But for the PRD, you're still sticking to Word document. Is it maybe because like a lot of people can easily like comment? It's like easier to have a discussion about the features?
Yes, of course. Discussions are very easy, and you don't need to make things
complicated,
more difficulty complicated.
Right. One more thing was that, so you mentioned that you already draft these strings and you have them approved, but how about the design of these new features? Is this already done as you you create the source strings, or no? Because otherwise to me, it seems like, like you're creating the strings without the, let's say, the visual context, like where it would be placed and how much space it would need and so on.
They are created in parallel, but at a later stage, we have to ensure that everything fits, that every text fits. For example, the text for a button should not be much longer than that button. And before we start the development, the design is already prepared, and the texts are approved, and the functionality is ready to be implemented. So there are no translations yet, but we can start development.
Are you using pseudo localization by any chance or no?
Sorry, pseudo
localization. Yeah. So it's when you sort of like RNG, like you randomly like replace the source string with some extended characters. You maybe extend the length of the string. So it creates something it's not a readable text, but it sort of like simulates how it would look like after translation. So the text could be longer. It has these extended characters. And then you can try to see if the pseudo localization with those garbled characters actually fits your design and if it doesn't break any functionality.
No, we don't do this at the localization, at the translations stage, but our translators have a special tool which can generate screenshots for them with the translation they've just provided. So for a German translation, a German translator types something, and the tool can generate a preview for them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit because it's my fault that we're just jumping around. So I think that after you mentioned that we have this document ready and the Lexeme table as well, then it goes to the localization managers and they put it into a system. So what kind of system are we talking about? Is this like your own TMS solution, sort of, or?
Yes, it's our in-house solution. I'll try to describe it. So it's just a web page where a special text area there you can paste the text. You click the save button, and every text is added into our system. After that, developers can assign a unique string text identifier and use the text into the source code.
Got it. So this is how you separate the resources from the code, right? So you can localize it.
Yes, you can translate and you can develop.
So how do the localization managers actually load up the strings into the system? Do they just like copy all the segments? Does it like detect, I don't know, like line breaks so that it like does the proper segmentation, or?
They do it manually.
Manually, one string by string, really?
One string by string. Yes.
Okay. All right. So then it's in the system and it's assigned the IDs from the developers. And then is that when you start the translation?
Yes. And after that, you can start translation and development. And every text, every lexeme should be linked to a ticket, JIRA ticket. That's how we track change.
Right. So the system that you mentioned is mostly just to do the translation. It's for the translators, but the actual workflow and what is happening with the lexemes, that's on the JIRA system. Is that correct?
We use JIRA to track change and to know when to deploy the changes. Because every functionality we release consists of two parts. It's the source code, which is in PHP, for example, and the translations, which are in different languages. And we have to deploy them at the same time. So when we deploy the source code, we find the related JIRA ticket. And that's how we find the related lexemes for this source code. and we release them simultaneously. Otherwise, the source code won't be working on production.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
And also we use these links to JIRA tickets for our dashboard, where we can see all tasks which are in progress. Because we have to finish translations, and after that, we will be able to release the functionality. And we also can see on this dashboard which languages are too slow. Yeah, that's all. That's how we use JIRA.
Right. So is that how the localization managers, let's say, push the translations to the translators? Is it through the JIRA ticket? How they notify them to start the translation, or is it through that special system of yours?
We use JIRA just for releases and for localization managers, just to control the overall release cycle. And our translators are notified by our custom notification system, and they can translate texts as soon as we add them into the system.
Mm-hmm. So the system we're referring to the one that you created, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It looks like, for example, a German or a Russian translator looks at the web page where their translation queue is shown. It's just text which should be translated.
One thing that I'm curious about is, from what I read, that you are using this collaborative translation platform. Is this what we're talking about? Because that sounds like crowdsourcing. Are you crowdsourcing everything, or do you have crowdsourcing only for specific cases? And I don't know, let's say if you're translating some important UI strings, then you have, let's say, dedicated translators which are working on certain languages.
We use this platform, the collaborative translation platform, just for those of our users who is willing to help us translate our products. It is just help to our professional translators. So we don't translate everything using this crowdsourcing platform, but we translate something, and it depends on the votes. So how it works? If you want to translate something, you just log in to this platform, add your translation, or vote for the existing one. And for example, if a translation gets 6 votes for Russian, for example, it can be reviewed by our translator and used as the default translation.
So the crowd can actually overpower the translator's own translation.
Sorry, what do you mean?
So let's say I'm not sure if I get this right. So let's say a string goes to a translator, right? Your professional translator. They do the translation, but then through the collaborative translation platform, the power users, they come up with their own translation and they upvote it. So would it be still the decision of the translator, and maybe they can be like, okay, I prefer the translation from the crowd rather than my own translation? Or is there a third party which maybe makes a decision if it's between the professional translator versus the crowd?
Let's say the crowd translation should appear before our internal translator provides their translation. Yes. And this platform works well for languages like, for example, Japanese, Korean, because we have some translators in our company, but not that much. We have only seven translators, which translates everything to, we call them main languages, which is French, Spanish, English, Russian, and what else?
Italian?
Italian, yes, Italian. So we translate into main languages by our own translators, and everything is translated within a couple of hours.
How much time do you, well, you just mentioned that it's translated within a couple of hours. Is that how you normally expect the translations to be ready? Because from what I understand, the development is running in parallel. So do you normally expect the translations to be done faster than the development, or is the development that fast as well, that you can pretty much dish out the features very, very fast?
First, we expect that every translation will be ready within 48 hours. And we don't expect that development will be finished within the same amount of time. That's why we have the check that everything is translated before we release. So we release when the source code is ready, and we also check that the translations are ready too. So what was the second question? The second part?
I don't know, but I have another question. So when we're talking about the translations, previously you mentioned something about screenshots. I'm not sure if this comes at a later stage, but since the development is sort of like still in progress, what context do the translators have when they get the strings for translation? Do you share with them maybe the design files, the PRD, or what do they have?
We always provide text description and a screenshot. So we always specify the context where this translation will be used. We do this on the stage when we add all the text into our system. So the localization managers not only add the text into the system, but also provide context. And we can, I already said this, but we can generate localized screenshots out of design files. We don't need to wait for development to be finished.
Yeah, maybe explain how that thing works. Like what design tool do you use? Like Figma, Sketch, or your own thing?
We have the ability to generate screenshots out of sketch files. A regular sketch file is just a zip file with a JSON in it. So you can unpack, amend the strings, and pack back into zip and generate previews.
Didn't know that. Okay. So the translations, once they're finished, do you have any quality process in place? Is there someone who checks the translations?
Yeah, sure. We have quality check, but we start checking translations just after they are added. So when a translator provides the translation, we validate the translation because we don't want to miss any HTML tags. We don't want to miss any variables, or we don't want variable names to be changed.
So these are like automated checks.
Yes, automated checks. And we also warn our translators if their translation is 30% longer than the original text. That's how we validate. So there's always the possibility to generate a screenshot and to check what will be shown in the end. For example, the source code is ready, the development is finished, and we have to check the localization. We can make screenshots of the test application and to send them back to translators and ask them, do you like how it looks like? And they can reply, yes, we like, or no, we don't like. Let's try with another translation. We have a special tool for this process, so where you can upload screenshots and ask translators. And also, we have the tool which is called Live Shots. This is an automation. It makes screenshots constantly, weekly, for example. And after that, you can go to a dedicated interface and check every scenario, every process you are interested in. For example, how our users see the process of purchasing of a special service. So this is the first screen, this is the second screen, the third screen, and the final screen. And you can check this process in any language.
Mm-hmm. Right. So this is automated, right? The screenshot creation.
Yes, the screenshot creation is automated, and our product manager has access to this system. So everything is controlled by everyone, starting from the translator.
Right, the localization managers.
Yes, after that, we also have the Q&A stage, where our QA engineers click, check every pop-up, every piece of our application or web application.
Does that happen after the translation is already like in, I don't know, some staging area? Or at which part does the QA come into play?
QA comes into play when everything is in development. So it also can be on staging. Usually we check our functionalities twice, when they are in development and when they are on staging. So this is just how our Q&A process looks like.
Got it. And one more thing that I was interested in, that previously you mentioned that for some of the languages, you don't have the people in-house, like the translators, like for Korean or something like that. That's where you utilize the crowd a little bit more. So are they also part of the review process, that they get the screenshots?
Yes. They are parts of the process. And yes, they're part of your process. They are the only people who know how the translations should look in their language. For example, almost no one understands Korean in our company.
So how did you pick the people from the crowd? Do you have like some criteria, or is like anyone can just volunteer and you rely on the power of the majority, let's say, that votes?
We just send... I have a story for you, which took place in Mexico. We wanted to translate our apps into Mexican, Spanish, and we asked our users to help us. We sent them notifications. And please help us translate in return for credits, which can be spent in our applications. And almost 5,000 texts were translated just in 2 days.
Wow.
I think we utilized greatly the crowdsource power.
So that's maybe the people who contribute to the translation process. But can people who are just users report translation issues when they're using the app in life. Like they're not part of the process in any way, but I'm just swiping left, right, and I see a problem. Can I report it somehow, or how does it work? Like a feedback from the actual, let's say, final end users.
Sure, you can report, but we don't choose crowd translators on any condition. We just ask all our users to help. We did that when we wanted to translate everything into Mexican, but now we send notifications only to those of them who are registered on that collaborative translation platform. So they want to translate, and we give them the possibility to do it, and we notify them.
Okay, maybe now let's dive a little bit deeper into the A/B testing, because to me that it's something that I actually was proposing to one bigger corporation before when I was working with them, and it didn't go anywhere. So tell me something about the A/B testing, how it works practically. Like, what translations would you A/B test? How does the A/B testing work? How you measure the results and so on?
Sometimes you need to identify which of translations is the best. So you have two, and you can't choose. And you can run an A/B test, and
at what time would you not be able to choose? Because so far I sort of understood that there's always this professional translator who can make the decision, or is it when that one person cannot decide? That's when they use the A/B testing, or in which case would you have two competing translations? Like I can imagine it like if you do the crowd translation, that maybe the votes are more or less equal, and that's when you would want to A/B test it. But if you have the professional and stuff, do they not have maybe they do have the power to decide which translation to select, but is it maybe when they're not decisive about the translation that they want to do the A/B testing?
Sometimes it's possible to translate the same idea using different tone of voices, for example.
Right.
And you have to test which tone of voice you should be using with your users and how it affects user experience. So that's why you have to try first. And you show users different variations, different variants. And after that, you just count, for example, amount of clicks. And based on that, you decide which translation you should leave. You should use as default.
Mm-hmm. Is it usually just A versus B, or can it also be multiple variants?
A, B, C, yes. Multiple variants are possible, and usually we test multiple variants.
And how are these A, B? I mean, how do you select the groups that, let's say, see the variant A? Is it all random, or do you have any systematic approach?
Yes, we have special tool where you can set up all rules. For example, these texts should be shown to users who are 27 years old, live in Germany or Spain, and speak this language.
Got it. What is the minimum criteria for A/B test to be considered valid? Like, probably need to have a minimum number of users that are shown these variants.
Yes, it's a number of users. I don't know the exact number, and I think it varies from a test to test. So, but basically, yes, it's a number of users, thousands of users.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think I haven't seen it anywhere else use practically, that people would actually use A/B tests to determine which translation is better. And I think that's actually one of the things where the other people could try something new, because normally it's really just that people rely on just on few individuals that say, okay, this is a better translation. But I think if you just show it to the users and let them decide instinctively which one is better, with which translation they maybe engage more, I think it makes a lot more sense. Okay, so that's maybe the A/B testing. So that assumes, I guess, that everything has been already deployed, but maybe you wanna talk about how the deployment works of everything.
Okay, let's talk. So deployment team, we have different approaches for different platforms, because it's very easy to deploy translations for server side or for web version, because we need only to deploy the translations into our servers. But and we have different approach for mobile applications, where we can either create a new build, release it through the App Store or Google Play, or we can also send a hot update to every our users and update their translations. And we can talk about hot updates, for example.
Yes. I was just going to ask about it. Like, is that your own custom solution, or is that something that all the mobile developers know about? Is it? I don't know what it is.
It's our custom solution. Every instance of our application checks on startup if there are new translations available for downloading.
Mm-hmm.
Because every instance of our application knows their version ID. Translation version ID. So they send this version to the server side, and the server side responds if there is something new for the client. If there is, then the client can download new version of translations and use it. And it takes 3 days to update 90% of our clients.
Right. So that's like, maybe let's say the frequency of how they use their app, and it triggers on the launch, right, of the app.
Yes. When you launch the app, it asks our server if there is something new.
Does the update happen in background, or is the user aware of that?
No. Everything happens in background.
So does it mean that through this hot update, you can also push updates to strings that would normally have to be updated through the build update that goes through the stores? Or are those strings separated? Because in this case, I'm not sure why you would have to do the regular update through the store if you can do everything through the hot update.
You have to do regular update through the store if you want to deliver a new functionality.
Right. Yeah.
And that's all. Every text can be updated using the hot update functionality.
I see. Okay. Cool. Is there anything else that we missed? I think one of the important things is because you have sort of like this lean operation, I would say. It's not very many LSPs and vendors and different supply chains involved. How does the interaction between the translators and the dev team work? Since they are pretty much your colleagues, especially for the main languages, do you interact just, I don't know, like through Zoom or through the ticket if they have any questions?
You mean how our developers and translators interact?
Yeah, because typically the translators might run into issues, like, I don't understand what this means. Even if you provide a description, maybe they're not sure about that. How do you handle the interaction between them?
every translator can ask the questions, can ask their localization manager for a context if they don't understand something. Sometimes translators ask the localization managers to split a lexeme, a text, because it's just impossible to translate correctly into their own language, correctly both for men and for women. So they ask to provide two separate texts. Our localization managers can reach developers, and developers can reach localization managers. For example, localization managers can ask developers to pass users' gender because we needed to choose the correct text for that particular user. So localization managers and developers can interact within our communication tools, such as Slack, for example. And other translators can communicate with the localization managers, but not with the developers.
Okay. Is there something else that you would want to highlight from the whole process? Because I feel like, I don't know if it's because I already did my research on this topic and I'm also not completely an IT noob, but I feel like we didn't go super techy. Like I would be like, what is he talking about? So is there something, I don't know, like what is like the one thing that you're like super proud of that you helped create, like from all the tools?
The super tool is our translation memory tool. We use it for all the languages. It helps us to keep style consistent and tone of voice, because it's very easy to check similar texts and how they were translated and to use the translation. It also speeds up the whole translation process.
Right. Do you have the TM integrated within the web platform where the translators do the translation, or is it separate?
Yes. No, it's integrated. Every time translator translates something, we show a small TM icon on top of the text area, which says that there are similar translations. Please check them. Don't do the work you can avoid. And talking about technical things, I can also tell you about how we check the way our developers use translations. So every time a developer asks our system to provide translations, so they use the text ID and call for translations. And they also provide values for substitution. For example, a text can have a variable, a numeric variable, amount of users, amount of likes, or just a name of another person. And we have to check that the users, the values which are passed for substitution, that they are correct. And at least we could check their types, that we don't try to substitute a string value. We don't try to substitute a string placeholder with an integer value.
Got it. Well, so when we are talking about the transition memory of your own, were you there from the start when you started working on this internal transition memory tool, or no?
I implemented it on my own. We had another implementation before. It was based on MySQL, but it was claimed to be not so good. And I just did a small investigation and understood that we could utilize Elasticsearch And do you know what is Elasticsearch?
I I was just gonna say that we're getting into the territory where it's techie, which is good. I heard about Elasticsearch before, but I do not know, so it would be a long shot for me. So please explain what is Elasticsearch.
Elasticsearch provides you with the possibility to search through enormous amount of text.
Right. Does it still have to be structured data, or is it also unstructured?
It's just unstructured text. And you can set up your own indices on those texts. For example, you can create index which will consist of bigrams. You know what is bigram, bigram?
No.
You split every phrase into pieces of 2 words or 3 words. And this increases
the speed of the search.
Not only the speed of the search, but the quality of suggestions.
Quality of suggestions, you mean like for example, when I use search in Google and I have the auto suggestions, or is that something else?
Look, for example, you have to translate a phrase which consists of 3 words, and you try to find a similar phrase, and you use by a single word. So you split your initial phrase into 3 independent words and try to find similar texts. So you find a lot of text, but the result will be greater if you split your text into couples, for example. This will help you to find only those matches which have this couple of words in them. And the order will be the same. So that's how it helps to improve the quality of predictions.
Got it. So when we're talking about the TM, I would assume that you probably did some research on the commercial TMs. So one of the things that you normally associate with TM is the TM matches. Like if it's a 100% match or like a 50% match, do you also integrate something like this? Let's say the translator would get as a suggestion the higher quality match versus the lower one, or do you have some sort of sorting?
Yes. The Elasticsearch provides a score, which we use for sorting, but we can't show the score to our translators because it's very hard to interpret it. And we just decided to calculate our own score, and it's just amount of different letters in the string. So we have a string of 100 letters. 13 letters are different, so we just divide 13 by 100, and that's our score. And it works.
Do you store any metadata about the translation pairs, like the source and the target? Like, do you store the description or, I don't know, some context around it?
You mean in the Elasticsearch? Because in our translation system, we store everything. We don't delete anything. And in the Elasticsearch, we store only the index we use to search for similar translations. So we store there the initial text and the identifier of that text in our system. And after that, we can find any translation in our system for that text.
Got it. And since you're so tech forwardy, what about machine translation? Have you evaluated machine translation, or does it not apply for for dating apps?
I don't think they can be applied for dating apps because in my opinion, machine translation is great for user-generated content. For example, you wish to translate comments on your site. It's okay to use machine translation here, or for example, for AliExpress. Everything is translated using machine translation on AliExpress. It's not a good translation, but it can be understood by anyone. And we, in our company, want to provide the best translations.
Right. Do you have any idea about the size of the strings or the words that are within the app?
The amount of text in our applications. We have 150,000 texts in our database.
But I think you mentioned that you don't delete it. So does it mean that these are also, let's say, old strings that are not part of the, let's say, the most up-to-date app, or is this really what's currently in the actual version?
Some of them are inactive, but most of them are active.
It's quite a lot. And by text, you mean a string or a word?
Usually I use the term lexem, which means
string.
Not string. It can be either string or just a word. A lexem is a piece of text which can be split, and we have to translate this piece whole. We can't divide it and translate separate parts. For example, for legal docs, a lexem is I don't know. It could be a sentence,
paragraph,
or a whole paragraph. Yes, but for interface lexem, for interface text, it could be just one word lexem. For a button, for example.
Okie dokie. So I think we've covered the process pretty much, unless there's something else that you want to share. If not, then I'll just grill you personally.
I think we have covered everything.
Maybe one thing, because I know that when we had our introduction call, and you also said that you guys share a lot about your process for the, let's say, the future generation of Alexeis and so on. So what is the one thing that you would advise to young software engineers in general? That would be my one question. And the second one would be specifically about localization. Because I would say that a lot of the people who are studying to become a software engineer, they don't think much about localization. So let's start with the first question, because I don't want to put you in. Yes. So what would be like your tip for, I don't know, people who are into coding, developing, and they're just still studying? What is the reality?
I would suggest them not to overcomplicate things. Just it's better to write a straightforward code, which is quite clear to everyone, than to use some language-specific features, for example, and it will be just more difficult to understand.
And what about localization? What is your experience? Do you consider yourself to be part of localization, or are you still just like a software engineer that does tools which are used for localization?
No, I don't just create tools for localization. It's a very interesting area, and For example, one part of this area is machine translation, which is a very interesting thing. And every software engineer who decides to work in localization should know that the localization, it's not only about showing different translations to users. So there is a great and difficult logic behind all this stuff.
Okay, so when you were younger, were you into coding? Like since what age were you into what you're doing right now? Are you that guy who was into computers like since
11?
Wait, where are you at? Are you actually that person who was like coding at age 11?
At 11.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, really. It was Delphi.
Wow, holy shit. That's crazy. What was the first thing that you were, I don't know, toying with?
It's Delphi IDE, Delphi Forms. Delphi was very popular 20 years ago.
Right. Wow. So what was the thing that you were, I don't know, thinking of building once you get to be an adult? Did you want to like create games or those kind of things, or?
To be honest, I didn't think about it at all. I was just curious about how everything works and why. First, I started from Delphi, then I tried assembler, and
I actually know that one. I'm that old. But I hated it when we had it at the university. It was like, why would I need to learn about assembler when we have, I don't know, Pascal and C and C# and C++ and so on?
Yeah, I tried C++ and Pascal. Yes, it was very interesting.
What is your favorite programming language?
To be honest, I don't have one. Now I use PHP and Python and JavaScript. But I also like, let's say, C++ and C, but I don't have tasks which I could solve using these languages.
So are you saying that there are specific programming languages that can solve certain tasks and the other languages cannot? Could you not create, I don't know, Bumble for guys in C++ or?
It's possible. You even can create Bumble using assembler, but it will take
ages.
Ages, yes. Some languages have libraries designed specifically for your task, and that's why you should use languages and not because you like them.
Right. That's why that's why Python is used for NLP stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of libraries created for machine learning. Yes.
So do you guys have any within the company, is there like a preferred programming language that you have to use, or for every project you can pick whatever you think suits the task the best?
The preferred language is PHP, but of course you can choose the language you want for your particular task. But that doesn't mean that one guy will be using Scala, his neighbor will be using, I don't know, Delphi or C#, for example. So now we use on a par with PHP, Kotlin language, and Go.
Sorry, what was the second one?
Kotlin.
Kotlin?
Kotlin.
I never heard it. Is that something new?
It's new. It's based on Java.
So tell me, what is Kotlin good for? What kind of tasks?
Oh, for Android.
Oh, okay.
It can be used for Android. It's based on Java. That's why it can be used for Android, for any other things where Java can be used. For web backend, for example. So you can use the same language to write server-side code and client-side code.
So, okay, I'll stop grilling you about software engineering. So let me ask you in general, what is it that you're curious about right now? Are you curious about how to change diapers?
I'm not curious about it now.
You already solved it, right? You have your programming language for that.
Yes, I'm a professional in that area. I'm curious about machine learning and investments, stocks, and all these kind of things.
So is that more like thinking about the future for your family, or is it to make more money, or both, or just being smart about money?
It's about future stability, and being smart about money is also okay for me. So it's interesting.
So where are you in that area? Like, are you a beginner who's learning about investing? Are you picking your own stocks, or are you investing just in some, I don't know, mutual funds or ETFs?
ETFs and individual stocks. I don't buy and sell every day. I just try to find a good company and to buy a little bit of it.
Buy and hold, right?
Buy and hold.
So what is something that people seem to misunderstand about you? And what this means is that, I don't know, I meet you for the first time, I join Bumble team, and I'm like, this guy is so-and-so, and then, I don't know, we have a beer half a year later, and I'm like, I was totally wrong about you, Alex. You're not like that. Do you feel like you give a first impression in a certain way that is actually not like who you are?
I wouldn't say so. What I would say is that I don't like when people think that if you are a computer guy, you are willing to fix their computer. Could you fix my computer, please?
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Yes. That's the question I usually ask them.
So what do you think is wrong with our industry? And by this, I mean the localization industry.
Localization industry, I think it's a perfect industry and almost nothing wrong with it, except that, in my opinion, some companies don't understand that localization can be a big part in the success of a product. So if you want your product to be used around the world, you have to localize it and you have to invest into localization. I think that's the only bad thing about localization industry.
Do you see any companies, for example, in Russia that are international and they come to Russian market, but they screw up their localization?
You mean screw localization into Russian language?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know some of companies. Some of them are very famous.
Be named.
Shall not be named, yes.
Okay. So here is the tricky question that people usually don't know how to answer. So you can pick one that you maybe are able to answer. Number one is things you changed your mind about. So what this means is that as you get older, you're like, I thought differently my whole life, but it's actually not like that. And the second is absurd or stupid things that you do that people wouldn't consider to be normal.
I changed my mind about mistakes. Now, making mistakes is okay for me. I try to do everything perfectly, but now I don't. I just do things that work, and that's okay.
Is this something that changed maybe because of the culture at the Bumble, or what has been behind the change?
Maybe if you are a programmer, you can always fix something, and nothing extremely wrong won't happen. So everything can be fixed, and that's the main idea. Regarding stupid things I do, some time ago, instead of relaxing in a proper way, I was scrolling news feeds, Facebook and YouTube. But when I noticed this behavior, I just blocked these sites.
Wow.
It's better to relax walking outdoors.
So are you using some app to block it during, I don't know, certain time, or did you block it fully? Like you can never go to Facebook?
etc hosts. You just have to amend the file in your file system. It's /etc/hosts, then IP, host name, and that's all.
Wait, that's a. Is it using command line?
You can use command line to access this file. Or
wait, what is it? /etc
/etc/hosts.
Hosts.
You can use Vim to amend it, or Nano. You just provide their correct host name and incorrect IP.
Right.
And it becomes impossible to access these sites.
Interesting. So now you don't know what's going on around.
And every time you try to access newsfeed of Facebook, for example, you just face this blocker screen.
So is it just for the newsfeed, or is it complete Facebook? Can you access the other features?
Complete Facebook. Yes.
So who's posting the pictures of the baby? Is it your wife? That's what Facebook is for, no?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Alex. Final words. One thing you could change or tell everyone in the industry, what would it be?
I know some people in our industry still use Google Sheets for translations. They tinker around it, and they write scripts to export translations and to import translations, to synchronize their local database with the Google Sheet. And I think it's not a good solution. It's error prone.
Right.
So stop using Google Sheets for localization.
Start using Microsoft Excel. This podcast is brought to you by Microsoft. No, I think we get the idea. Right, Alex, thank you very much for the interview today. I hope you had a not so bad time. Okay, time. So thank you, and I'll see you some other time, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.